Okay, so as I say that, we're going to begin with our Inclusive Growth Women Transforming Male-Dominated Fields, which will be moderated today by Councillor Rowena Santos, and I will let her take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's really wonderful to be part of this panel and to moderate. And so welcome to everyone in the room for choosing this particular panel. I would like to first just introduce our panelists, our incredible panelists who are breaking barriers, that are crashing through glass ceilings and setting the stage for more women to enter into their various fields and their industries. So first we have Kelsey Annan, Interim Manager for Women in Red Seal Skilled Trades at Sheridan College. Kelsey Annan is a Red Seal certified tool and die maker who has risen through the ranks from pre-apprentice to become the first female lead hand at Massive Die Form, a division of Magna International. She's dedicated to promoting opportunities in the skilled trades for women at Sheridan College, where she conducts hands-on workshops. In addition to her teaching efforts, Kelsey is actively building a network to empower and support women in achieving success in the trades. And Kelsey and I were having a side conversation beforehand because my first job as a teenager was actually at Massive Die Form. And we know similar people who are, some of them are still there working at Massive Die Form. Next, we have Josie Pingitore, Vice President of Brampton Honey Badgers. With over 20 years of experience in the sports and entertainment industry, Josie is a seasoned leader known for her expertise in project management, creative business development, and relationship building. As Vice President of the Brampton Honey Badgers, Josie plays a key role in shaping the team's strategic growth and fostering strong community relations. Throughout her distinguished career, Josie has held prominent positions at Ticketmaster, Toronto Blue Jays, MLSC, and U Sports. She has also contributed her talents to global events like the FIFA Women's World Cup, and has been a critical figure in the Canadian Elite Basketball League since its inception in 2018. Give it up for Josie.
Mine's not that great. Just you got to clap anyway, but it's not so good.
We have next Debbie Slater, who's the Director of Manufacturing, Plant Manager of Maple Leaf Foods. Debbie Slater is the Director at Maple Leaf Foods and the Plant Manager of the Brampton facility. With over 35 years of experience, Debbie started her career in manufacturing at Catamaran Sail Power Boats before entering the food industry over 10 years ago. As co-chair of the Maple Leaf Foods Women in Manufacturing Employee Resource Group, Debbie is deeply committed to mentoring and empowering women. Her passion lies in fostering opportunities for women to have a voice at the table, yes, and driving change to see more women in manufacturing positions. And so, Debbie, you get that round of applause, 100%. And I like that we concluded the reading of the biographies with that quote, voice at the table. There's one quote that I always share at any women's event, which is, take your place, own the space, and do it with style, humor, smarts, and grace. And taking your place, sharing your voice at the table is exactly what we're going to be doing this afternoon in front of this incredible group of people. And I'm a counselor. You all know that, I think, maybe. And the first question is actually about male-dominated fields. Certainly for myself, every single day, for the most part, it's male-dominated, and it brings its own challenges within the political realm. But I know that in all industries, you face similar challenges, similar barriers, similar experiences. So the first question is for everyone. What unique challenges do you face entering male-dominated industries, and how did you overcome them? Who'd like to begin? Kelsey,
I can start.
the tool and die maker.
Yeah, I pressed the button the fastest. When I started my apprenticeship, I was entering a manufacturing facility. It was a whole new world for me, right? You don't have that type of experience when you're younger. And I was so focused on learning what it takes to become a tool and die maker that I was almost blind to the issues that I was facing as a woman. And it wasn't until, someone kind of highlighted like, oh, they don't have a change room for you. Like they just put a locker in a bathroom, or, oh, the PPE, the protective equipment doesn't actually fit you, or the uniform is taking longer to get for you because they've never had to order one. But I was so like wanting to learn the trade, and I was so focused on that aspect of it that it actually didn't feel like an issue at first until, I started getting into like, oh, maybe I should have my own change room, and just starting to speak up. And a lot of the times other people didn't even realize it. They're like, oh, I didn't know you were facing that. So there were a lot of small things that came up that I just kind of learned to adjust to and kind of pivot. And sometimes it was just go with the flow, and sometimes it was speak up. And it was interesting. It was just everything was a new experience. So sometimes I was looking at it as this is just new to me, and not realizing, oh, I'm also the only one facing this issue.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I think that in the various corporations, companies that folks have, as more women or gender diverse individuals work in companies, and quite frankly, we need them to, because we need the skills, we need the labor, because there's shortages in some of these sectors. The facilities, like just the facilities or just the uniforms, in order to make sure that it is inclusive and also welcomes folks who are entering the field perhaps for the first time. So thank you for that. Josie, what about yourself?
So for me, I think there's a bit of some of what you experienced as well. So I kind of started in the event space, and when I was beginning my career, when you started in the event space, there were certain areas of planning an event that were the female roles, which were ticketing, customer service, guest services, those types of roles. And then the men did the operations, they did conversions, they did sponsorship and all those other roles. So I came up kind of in the ticketing, guest services side of things. So for me, I was in one of the female roles, but was still at the table with a bunch of men. So I kind of developed myself into that area, and that's a very niche market. Doing ticketing as kind of a full-time job not a lot of people do that. So I myself kind of became a commodity there's not a lot of people that do this role. There's not a lot of people and a lot of seats at the table for this position, but you're at the table. So then you capitalize on that, and you start having conversations, and you start picking up different parts of event planning. So then you do security, and then you do sales, and you pick up different pieces of what comes into an event as a whole. And then you start to develop more skills, and you develop more connections. And so that's kind of how I came up. And I didn't really even notice that was a thing until you kind of step away and look at everybody in this ticketing meeting's a female. Every single person in the security meeting's a male. And why is that? And then kind of as my career started to develop, you just kind of put yourself in that room. You put yourself at that table. You put yourself in that conversation, and you have to kind of be your own biggest advocate, because no one else will do that for you. So you learn to be resilient. You learn to be your own biggest advocate, and make sure that you make space for yourself if no one's going to do that for you.
Thank you so much. And that's about, taking your place and owning it. And owning it means also being your biggest advocate and speaking up for when those gender-specific roles that get delegated to you just because you're a woman. Like how many women in this room have experienced being at a leadership table, and everyone's like, okay, so who's going to take the notes? And then they all look at you. Yeah, totally. There was one personal experience, or a number of personal experiences, where I have a colleague who is my ward pairing council colleague, And I've walked into meetings with residents where I've come fully prepared, have done all my homework, have actually led the meeting to the point where the meeting is happening, and I show up and the residents are like, "Oh, you must be Councillor Vicente's assistant." And we love our assistants. We love our assistants and all the work that they do. But those are the things, as women in these roles, as we're facing male-dominated fields, it's just assumed that that's what our role is. So appreciate those comments for sure. I spoke up, by the way. I spoke up and I said, "No, I'm the counselor. I organized this meeting, and here's my business card." Debbie, what about yourself? What sort of challenges have you faced, and what have you done to overcome them?
I don't actually need this because I'm loud enough. But for some of you in here who heard my talk a while ago, I'm a little bit different. So I grew up in a very entrepreneur family. I had 3 girls and 1 boy. So my dad always instilled in us that, you know, you have to be out there, you have to be type A. So I am that person. So for me, it's a lot easier. We had a company for 20 years, boat building company in Whitby, where I started my manufacturing career. So as owners of a company that grew to about 125 people, we set the course. So having somebody this is my husband and I, so having somebody like me who will battle that was a lot easier there, because we made the choices of who was going to sit in what seat, how much they're going to make. We made it fair. We unfortunately had to close down that business in 2007. And about 10 years ago, I started with Maple Leaf, and it was a bit of an eye-opener, because now it wasn't really about me, because I can go into a room and own it. I'm just that obnoxious. Like, I just go in. I have no time. I'm old. Get to the point. Let's go. However, and I run a place with 4 people, and they still like me. But what I'm saying is it became very clear to me very early that there were a lot of very strong women that just didn't have that voice. And I didn't have the power anymore to say in that meeting necessarily, can we just, have this say, can we have this listen? And over the years, I think the challenge, and Maple Leaf's been a great place for inclusive and diversity. They allow us to have those conversations, and we have some pretty transparent conversations. I think the challenges have always been making sure that the people that are with you and your fellow females have the voice, and you advocate for their voices when you can. Because if you don't, nobody else is going to, right? And I think, we look at restructuring, and restructuring always means men are going and not necessarily women. And it's a ceiling, and you have to fight those battles. And being an advocate for each other is the only way you're going to do it. So I spend a lot of my time now. I run a plant, and that's great, but there's a lot of times that I'll go in DEM2 and I'll do talks and I'll mentor people. And I think that's how we can do the best we can do and overcome those challenges, because the challenges are always going to be there. It's never going to be, it's funny, because I was explaining to somebody I've run 5 plants now for Maple Leaf, usually ones that are in trouble. And the last one, I was in Guelph, and I sat there and I said, the funny thing is when I look at what the women bring at that manufacturing table, and believe me, this is like, we're making kits. So we make a walker, we make, your hamburgers, your chicken wings, like all that kind of food stuff. And it's interesting to see when someone comes in that doesn't have the confidence, how that affects the mood in the room. Mm-hmm. And I think that, I think you need to some degree, fake it till you make it. We're not always comfortable, but you need to walk in and make sure they understand that you're okay. You got this, whether you agree with them or not. So I think that's been a huge challenge that I see for people, and for myself too. I have to sometimes, do whatever I have to do. But but there's only 2 of us out of 14 plants, only 2 women.
Wow.
Running 14 plants. So we still have a ways to go. So
there's a lot of ways to go. And I love the fact that you're talking about confidence, right? And this concept of faking it till you make it. I know that there's city staff. My team is here. I always like to own the space with confidence and say things with conviction. And sometimes if being vulnerable with all of you, that's a lot of effort. That's a lot of energy, especially when you're having a really bad day, to bring that confidence forward. And I have my my co-op student, Felicia, please stand up, who is an incredible young woman who I've been mentoring for many, many years. Thank you, Felicia. And what I tell young women is to make their voice hit the wall so that they can hear it when it comes back. Because I find that women, young women, women entering some of these fields, sitting at the table for the first time, don't have that confidence in their own voice. And that is one of their weaknesses at that table, especially with men who are all, or like mostly men who are already undermining your value when they see you. They're not a weakness, an opportunity. And so I really like the fact that you're talking about confidence, because it's part of our mentorship, part of the things that we're doing in the companies that you all represent is providing that mentorship and telling that next person, woman rising up the ranks to say, speak louder, be more confident. Let me help you, support you through that. All right. So next question. We're going to go with Debbie first. So we're talking about having your voice at the table. Why is it important for women to have that voice at the table? We'll start with Debbie first.
So a lot of reasons, but I'll just go by manufacturing because that's what I know. That's my truth. So, for example, at one of the plants I ran, we had a very male-dominated supervisory team. So we had 5 male supervisors, 1 female supervisor. And when you get them in a room and you're talking about how they deal with people, it is so different. We inherently are not the same as men. I'll just start off by saying that. But so the whole concept that we're going to be like a guy is just crap. We're not. We're built differently, we think differently, and we should be okay with that. And men think a certain way. And we both bring things to the table. And when we talk about human skills, because I don't like the word soft because that means it's weak, human skills and structural skills, if you want, are different. And when I look at how I changed the supervisors at Speedville, at least, and we had some opportunities to bring some women in, they were like you say, they came in from male-dominated manufacturing where they were just not treated very well, came in pretty, this girl I'm talking about is probably 31, very young, came in pretty haggard from her experience. And, we took her on, obviously, and, we spent a lot of time in groups that were different genders for her to see how she can have her voice at the table. It took a while. She was very shy, very good at what she does. Didn't understand the value she brought. And when you look at how her team reacts now to how it was when it was a male supervisor, totally different. Males can learn a lot from us because some males in general don't put enough value on how that person feels on the floor, right? And women just inherently can get to them better. You don't want to know everybody's business, but you do want to know how your people are feeling and be intuitive to that. And so I think that when you look at what does gender equality bring, it brings those other qualities that we have as women into a situation where it can do us a lot of good. And I found that with my supervisors, it was amazing. Now you look at that, it's 50-50, it's actually 60-40 for women, but it's a much even-keeled group. They all bring their own things to the table. They're not shunned for what they bring to the table. And it just, you can see the difference in the people on the floor.
And that translates into more productivity, I take it?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
I'll pass it over to skilled trades side of the table. Kelsey, how does having more gender diversity have an impact on innovation and growth?
It's just trying to find that different point of view. I can just think, like, if you think about all the different cars on the road and you look at a minivan and you just know the person that came up with Stow and Go was someone who was struggling with their minivan and their kids and trying to move it. And these things are so heavy. And a woman comes up and says, why can't we just press this? And then it gets out of my way. And it's, we're losing an opportunity to see different point of views and the ways that we can change the world around us. I found myself thinking about when the one speaker that was talking about disabilities and accessibility and how, I think about the trades in that I had to drive a forklift, and if the propane ran out, I then had to try and lift a 50-pound propane tank over my head onto this fork. And then I said, I need a step stool. I need a ladder. I need a movable ladder. And they're like, okay, that's no problem. We can go get that. And now everyone in the facility is using it because it's easier for everyone, right? It was an accommodation for me, but then they realized, no, actually everyone should be doing this because it's safer for everyone. It's more ergonomic. So it's just getting different point of views to improve everyone's life, right? The change was for me, but everyone benefited from it. And I see that a lot with the different point of views and getting more women to speak up.
Thank you, Kelsey. And Josie, in the world of sports, why is it so important to have gender diversity?
Yeah, so I think it's specifically in the events in sports space, it's really important because you're putting on these events for the spectator, and the spectator is every type of individual. And so when you're putting on an event, you're going to make certain accommodations depending on your demographic and your audience. So, for example, we play out of the CAA Center, and the CAA Center has been there for a long time. There's a lot of improvements that the building has made, but there's a lot of things that have been there and have been the same since the first day that it ever opened its doors. One of the issues that we had as a team was accessible seating and making our events and our experience, our game day experience, accessible to everybody and a good experience for everybody. So previously, and what they do as a venue for a lot of events is they have an accessible area in the second level of the stadium, which could be great for a lot of events. But when you think about an emergency happening, the elevators get locked and they're not usable. And what are you going to do? There's a staircase, but that's not accessible. There's no other way to get downstairs other than manually carrying somebody down the stairs. That's not very accessible. It's not very inclusive. So we as a team identified that very early on as an issue for us. And we looked at our setup. We looked at the ways that we can make it accessible for everybody, whether it's a physical, visual, audible accessibility that somebody has, and make that experience just as good for that person sitting courtside. So we completely changed our configuration on our courtside seating. Behind one of the nets, we made an accessible area. We have that area sold out often, full on a lot of games, and we have a lot of positive experience. But that's something that we've been in that venue for almost 3 years now, and it hadn't been done until we came on and we had our planning sessions and identified that as we can't put people upstairs. That's not acceptable. So just a different perspective. I think women often, because of our experiences and because of what we've had to deal with, put ourselves in the positions of the other person and are very empathetic to what other people have to go through, and that inherently is invaluable.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for that. So our next question, I'm going to bring it back over to Kelsey first. In terms of, and now we're going to talk about some training and program and developments, but how can companies better align their different programs and training development programs for women in these fields, particularly in tool and die, in the skilled trades?
I think one of the most important things companies need to do for development programs is to actually take a look at how your company operates before you hire the first woman. I see this happening a lot where companies are like, yes, we want more women, we want to bring them on, and they hire their very first one, and they start to realize, oh, whoops, we need to improve, we need to create a change room for them. So we're going to take this change room away from this group of men. Or there's no bathroom for them, so now we're going to designate this bathroom for them. We don't have the proper PPE, so we're going to get them this special PPE. Or I don't think the culture on the work floor is appropriate, so we're going to have everyone do EDI courses. Now, that woman has entered the workforce, and now everyone's work experience has changed. And they're looking around and saying the only thing that's changed is there's a woman here. So it's her fault that we lost the bathroom. It's her fault that we have a smaller change room. Why does she get special PPE? I wish I had that. It's her fault that we have to do all these courses. She just wanted an opportunity at a amazing career that pays well, but now she's got a target on her back. I'm not saying, every single person there, some of them are going to say, that's unfair. I'm so happy they're making those changes. But everyone's not going to be like that. So my hope is that companies can reflect on what kind of work environment they have and maybe start making those changes beforehand, creating programs that are more welcoming to bring more women in before they actually join. And like I say, it'll benefit everyone, right? EDI benefits everyone, right? It's not just for the equity deserving community. Everyone is going to benefit from a more respectful work environment. So those are kind of the programs that I think companies need to look at and reflect. One thing I always say is, if you work in a manufacturing facility, but you work in HR and you're one of the few women at the company, if you walk through your factory floor and if you're feeling uncomfortable, then maybe you need to reflect on why you feel that way. And maybe you need to change the culture of your workforce before you introduce women into the trades, because that's why we see a lack of retention.
That is such a good point, Kelsey. I remember that shop floor when I worked there back in the day in the 1990s, and it was very male dominated. And even myself, when I was walking across the floor to get to the other office on the other side, felt very uncomfortable. So, of course, only a woman would come up with that idea, going through her experience of what that was like. Thank you very much for that response. Kelsey, anything to add on that one in terms of the training programs and development programs to support women in these fields? Josie. Sorry, Kelsey. Did I say Kelsey again? Josie.
So for me, I think that's actually an interesting one, where in sport, at least in my experience, I've had the opposite problem, but because it's a problem. So every training session that I've ever been to, whether it be at the Jays or at FIFA, even if they're led by men, they always give the woman the training, the job of planning the training session. So I don't know what to take from that. I think it's because women it's probably a job the man doesn't want to do, perhaps. But the training session have always been led or organized by women in my experience. So, I mean, I think that's a good start, because like what I said previously, I think we often think of other people when we plan or when we talk or when we organize. But I think that is an issue, because then the men who are then leading the team are not part of that evolution. They're not part of that learning and training. So in sport in particular, I think men are often very comfortable in their positions because they've been there for so long. They train each other. They help each other out in these different jobs. They promote each other. But my experience has been a little bit different on that side. So obviously, I think it's important. I think it's very important to have women involved in the training and the development of these programs. But I also think it starts from the top down. So it shouldn't just be staff coming into the organization that are being trained. I think the executives and the CEOs and the commissioners and the tops of these leagues and these organizations also need to be involved in taking these trainings and kind of starting from scratch, because I don't think anybody who is a male in sport at the top of these organizations have had the same experiences that we have. So...
Absolutely. And at the City of Brampton, we passed a motion to require all of council and all of the people leaders to do gender-based analysis plus training at the City of Brampton, which is a fantastic training course. But the folks who were most enthusiastic about taking the training were the folks who didn't necessarily need the training the most. and it's quite, I still, if I could be honest, find it questionable whether or not, in fact, certain folks did take it or they had their assistants take it on their behalf. So I think, the training programs are very important. It's just, earlier, like you said, Kelsey, trying to create a culture that welcomes it, because some of those culture changes are really difficult to break through. Debbie, any thoughts on this one in terms of training and programming within food manufacturing?
Sorry. Usually people can hear me. In food, most of all the plants I've been to, 90% of the people working on the floor hourly are women. They're not men. It's not like you'd find in probably automotive. It's a lot more women dominated in food. So we spend a lot of our time trying to take lead hands and people and get them off the floor and get them into supervisors. Not always successfully, but that is what we do. When it comes to development in the salary group at Maple Leaf, I think one of the things that was successful for us that we did was really pushing these ERG groups. So I'm on the Women in Manufacturing group. I also mentor probably six women that are there. And a lot of that mentoring under development is all about, how do I deal with my boss? How do I deal with my male guy, or even female? Believe me, it can be either one. But how do I, and they're younger, they're 35, like, not to be on a soapstone or anything, but we're asking a lot of 32-year-old people. We're asking 35-year-old people more and more to bring all this maturity to the plate that they don't have. They don't have the experience. Like, they haven't been around long enough to been, I wouldn't say beaten, but to have had challenges and gotten through them. So one of the things, development programs I think we need to be more about is mentoring and having younger people with older people so they can understand what that could look like and what was successful for us and how that might help you. I don't think we do that enough. I don't think we look at our other person enough, and because we're so busy doing our own job. We spend a lot of time trying to recognize the people that may be in trouble or that want to mentor and developing them that way. I know you can't develop everybody, but you know who your people are that can make a difference, and you need to take the time to develop them. And so for me, for at least the food business, developing would look like that. It would be around mentoring, because you can send them out to courses, but it's not going to help them with the person at work. Somebody, an outside schooling is not going to help them understand what that Maple Leaf boss is like, and what maybe we can tell them to do that, make it better. So for me, that development would be around that piece.
Wonderful. Thank you. And speaking about bosses and confidence, how many folks are in leadership positions within their organization as it is now? Yeah. So, as women, we have these barriers in terms of finding our voice, getting our place at the table, having our confidence, being the boss. And yet, for example, for myself at the council table, when I'm being boss, Councillor Santos, I'm suddenly stereotyped as being a BI, whatever, even though I'm just being a boss and I'm just being confident and speaking with conviction and know what I'm talking about. But for some reason, when some of my male colleagues are speaking in the same tone or in behaving sometimes in even a more, forceful manner, no one ever says anything about that. It's only why, Santos is the big, bad, evil, bossy, BIT, whatever. And I'm sure you probably get that because, in your roles, there aren't much women there, but you do stand out as it is. You are the boss and you do speak with confidence and conviction. So what are some of the actionable steps that can be taken to break down some of those stereotypes and biases in your various fields when it comes to women? I'll start off with Josie.
Yeah, I think that's probably the umbrella of this entire talk, is that if you're strong and if you're confident and if you're assertive, then you're those words, and you're aggressive instead of assertive, and you're emotional instead of confident, and you're all these other things. There's these other words that are used to describe women when you're talking about the way that they act. And for me, it just, because I started in this type of position when I was still in school, and this was never meant to be my career, I have been through a lot when it comes to experience, and I just find it so funny because it really is a reflection of that other person and their insecurities. If you can't sit in a room with somebody who doesn't look like you and respect what they're saying, understand where they're coming from, and have a takeaway and an action item from what they're saying to you, that's way more a reflection on you than it is in me. And it has nothing to do with the words that I'm using or the tone that I'm using. It's the translation between your ears to your brain that you're putting on what I'm saying. So I've taken that approach a lot when I have to do the boss B things. And it doesn't bother me, but it does make it difficult when you're working with a team of then people who don't want to take what you're saying seriously or take it as an action item. So I think You do have to be confident in what you're doing. You do have to be sure that you're doing the right thing. You have to know why you're making the decisions that you're making. You have to take other people's feelings and where they're coming from and their perspective into account. But at the end of the day, you're in that position for a reason, and you need to stand by that, and you need to, as long as you know that you're doing the right thing or what you think is the right thing, then you have to stand by that. But one thing that you were saying in the previous point that you were making made me, because I can't really filter my face when it comes to my reactions, but what you were saying about the mentoring program, I think on the sports and the event side, I think it might be the exact opposite. With you would put a younger person with an older person who's been in the field for a really long time, because I think for my side of things, the reason why we have a lot of the gender inequality or women not in those fields is because of the older way of doing things. Yeah. So you want to almost partner a millennial with an older person.
That's what I meant.
The reverse?
Like, yeah, I meant you want to go with the more mature person,
Yes.
the younger person, because you can learn.
Mature in age. Yeah.
Mature in age, so-
I'm talking about the younger person mentoring the older person in the sport and event field, because I think the events in particular, it's just been copy paste for so many years, and you have these events that have been there for 50 years, and you have that guy in security who's been there, literally in our building, of the guy in security who's been there since the building opened, and you have all these people who've been there for 26 years and 30 years and all this stuff, and they've just done things the exact same way every time. So I think for us, it would be the opposite, where you would mentor somebody who's a little bit younger and has a different perspective and is more aware of diversity and the importance of that, mentoring them with somebody who's been there for 50 years and having them think differently.
So I'm going to pass this one over to you, Debbie, as well, because you spoke about confidence, and you shared with us, when I'm the boss, folks know I'm the boss, and I have no problem with them knowing that. So how have you managed to break down some of those stereotypes and biases within your field?
So I don't have a lot of patience. I'll just tell you that. Okay. So what's one of the things, like, you learn what you have to work on, and patience was one of them. The other thing is to know your audience. So I'm very much, I like to think I'm funny. I don't go into my job. I don't treat my people. I think I know I treat my people well, but I treat it with a sense of humor. There's a time to work. We have 400 people at the plant. There's a job to be done, but not everything is solving world peace. And I think that when you are dealing with people and you're trying to get the best out of them, it's all about how you're going to engage them to come in. I can tell you that I've been doing this let's forget about PDQ. Let's talk about Maple Leaf, because that's where somebody else is really bossing me, right? I don't have that much say. So in that particular thing, I think I've had to tell people be bitchy maybe 3 times in my career. I've had to be that person, because I've managed to find a way, although I have no patience, I've managed to find a way to sit with people and get what I need out of them. And I think that that's the trick, is understanding who's at the table. Not everybody's the same. I mean, I can tell you a really quick story. We had a QA person, and if you understand QA, production QA don't usually get along in manufacturing, because manufacturing just wants to go and QA wants to make a safe food, and we're all about the safe food, 100% safe people and safe food. But there's always going to be a bit of conflict, natural conflict there. And I was having this problem with this QA manager, and I was a production manager at the time, and driving me nuts. And I went to this Go Find Yourself course where they tell you what you're like. And I'm up here as give me the end result, tell me how to do it, let's get it done. And she's down here analyzing, because she's QA. And so she's scientific, she wants to. And I thought, I've been going at this the wrong way, because I would go to her and say, okay, we got to get this done. And she'd be like, oh. So I learned. I just used to take my paper, I would take it to her and say, here it is. You go, do what you need to do on your own. Figure it out and come back and tell me. So I wasn't rushing her anymore. I was rushing her. I was too much in her face. I was rushing her as I want the answer. And then she'd come back and I'd grin and bear it for 15 minutes, and we'd come up with the right solution. So for me, it's all about how do you deal with those people? How do you deal with them when they are being snarky? So I've been to many M2 meetings where, somebody will cut me off, right? And that's a real big thing. And that's men and women. That's just not men. But, I would probably do a joke to make my point. They'd stop talking for sure, but it wouldn't be like, whatever. I would use humor to to make them understand that you just cut me off and I'm trying to say something. Let me get to the end of it. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. That makes sense.
Well, thank you, because that fits in with my little quote of take your place, own the space, do it with style, humor, smarts, and grace. Kelsey, anything to add in terms of breaking down those stereotypes and biases within skilled trades?
I think it's just to, I think the most important thing is to acknowledge that biases, everyone has them. A lot of times they don't even realize they have them. It doesn't mean that they get to have them for the rest of their life, but you just need to acknowledge where they're coming from, and also acknowledge that you have them too. Trying to break down those stereotypes. I've even caught myself being judgmental. I work so hard being a female in the trades, and then when another woman's hired and she's not doing it the way I would have done it, and I'm thinking, you're ruining it. I've worked so hard. And then I have to stop and say, no, we don't represent the whole gender. A mistake is allowed to happen. So just even catching myself and stopping myself from falling into those stereotypes, and then giving other people the grace, and acknowledging it. No, you might think that, but that's not actually true.
We don't have the confidence, we don't have the confidence to allow brilliant people to sit beside us.
We don't have the confidence to have brilliant people sit beside us. Expand a bit on that.
So when you're earlier in your career, I would be intimidated, male or female, as somebody who knew more than me at the table. And so as a boss, I learned very quickly that I want the most brilliant people around me. I'm not afraid to lose my job. My job, really, as I sit as a plant manager of this thing, my next role, whatever that may be, I'm hoping it's selling fries at McDonald's, because that's all I can deal with right now, but on a stressful day. But I'm just saying, my job is to figure out who's going to take my job. And I learned that in my 40s. I learned that really quickly. And when you learn that, let people be what they want to be. Yeah. If they're going to conniving and behind your back, and you're always going to have those kind of people, if you hold straight to the fact that you want to surround yourself with the best people, your team's amazing. And believe me, your job's a lot easier. And we don't feel, I don't know about you guys, but it was a hard one for me to get over, because I didn't trust that.
Yeah.
I didn't trust that person's not going to want to, get around me or,
Right.
whatever. So I think that's, again, it's trust and patience and understand that it will fall if you have the right people. So surround yourself with the right people is a biggie.
Awesome. So I think we have just less than 10 minutes left before we have some questions from the floor. So I know that it's now post-pandemic world for us. And a lot of women, how many women here work from home often? Yep, me as well. And now that more women and people are working from home, and the woman's still usually the primary caregiver at home, taking care of the house and the kids, how have you navigated through this challenge? And I'm going to start with Josie on this one.
Yeah, so within the last 4 years, with the CBL, when I was at the league office in 2020 during the pandemic, we were the only sporting event in the world that played through the pandemic. So we had a bubble event that happened. We did it in St. Catharines. So we worked through the summer of 2020 in a bubble. We put on a number of basketball events within 21 days. We were there morning till night, and we did it safely, and we completed the entire event. That was the second season of our entire league's existence. So we worked through the pandemic. We were then mandated to work from home. And that was a really hard pill for my bosses, who were all men, to swallow, because they felt that they were losing a lot of control over what was happening on the day-to-day, and were people actually working, and the same things I think a lot of companies went through. But it really allowed people to see that, you don't have to show up to the office every single day in order to get the same amount of production out of people than you normally would. And what I think it actually ended up doing was open the space for a lot of women who are primary caregivers, who have to work from home because of childcare situations or pickups and drop-offs, or being a single mother, or certain things where they would need to work from home in order to have that job. They would need that concession to be made for them. And so at the league office, post-pandemic, we saw a big influx in women being hired. And I don't know that it was a direct correlation to that, but there was a lot more work from home. There was a lot more certain days that people and women had to be out of the office, and that was okay, and that became normal. In these 4 years, I I started my career with the league. I got married. I have had a child. I have a toddler at home. So you have to just make it work. The job is still there. You still have to get things done. You still have to lead a team. You have to figure out ways to do that, whether you're showing up to the office or whether you're doing it from home. But I think it allowed us to be more understanding of people's situations, and then in turn offer other people work from home days and other concessions that made them happier at work. So I never really had any time off during the pandemic. We worked right through it, which a lot of people did. I think we were talking, there was pandemic, the what pandemic. So we just still probably wearing masks and doing things a little bit differently, but there was no shutdown. So you learn to make it work. It was growing pains, but we got it done. We got the event done. And then I actually think in the workspace, at least in our area, we're a little bit better off because we had people work from home more often, which they appreciated. And then in turn, you get more output out of people who are happy to be there. So I think it ended up working out. It was obviously an awful thing to go through, but to come out of it in the workforce, I think there were some positives that did come out of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josie. And so we have about 10 minutes left, and we're going to open the floor to a few questions. And I'm hoping, because no one's asked this question yet, in terms of advice to give to women aspiring to enter their fields where they face various barriers. So I'm going to leave that out there. I'm sure someone's going to be asking for advice from the panel, and over to Sonia for any questions from the floor.
So if anyone has any questions, just lift your hand and I'll come over with the mic. Okay, amazing.
I had to ask this question in regards, it's going to be vulnerable, but in the aspect of intersectionality. Myself being a Black woman, many times it's double whammy. And to actually disclose, I also have a disability. So one thing I do whenever I may have to deal with a client or applying for a job, one of the first things I do is I look at the board of directors or the senior team of the website. And of all the years, which have been many years, I've never seen a Black woman. I wanted to touch upon what you were saying, because I find one thing that may be helpful is the shadowing to help women move up the ladder in that regards. I know for myself, having a background in the training and development industry, they were actually confidently told me that the reason why is because I would have to train them, majority of the audience being men, and me being a Black woman, they may not necessarily take me seriously. So my question is, how would you recommend Black women to be part of that conversation, and if the advocacy is there for them as well?
Who wants to take that one first? Or I can give you some time and buy some time, because that's a really difficult question. And certainly, even at the corporation, at the city of Brampton, we have our own challenges in dealing with that. However, we're lucky because we have Gwyneth Chapman and our anti-Black racism team within the city of Brampton, as well as in our economic development team, to bring more voice, more ideas and solutions and to the table at the city of Brampton in the various departments that we have. And Councillor Brar and I were the only two councillors who are women on our council, and we wanted to make more space, not just for women, but addressing intersectionality. And so we created a women's advisory committee that advises the council table. And in fact, the two co-chairs are here. Angel Massey Singh and Kathleen Douglas are our inaugural co-chairs of that committee, which represents diverse voices and experiences at the table. At the corporate level, I'm not sure. So I'll leave it to the panelists perhaps to provide some examples or thoughts on that.
So I'm kind of sitting here, I'm not usually for a loss of words, but it's not easy, right? And you're right, you have double whammies going on there with people, whatever they think. Me personally, I don't have that much I have to deal with. I'm a woman, you've got the other things you're talking about. but you just need to plow through it, because the reality is you are your own voice. And I think it's very smart when you're saying you look at CEOs. I think that's brilliant. I think you're going to be disappointed every single time you look. Because if I look at Maple Leaf, and we do such good work, it's male dominated. We're very multicultural. I will tell you, Maple Leaf is a very multicultural company at the salary level. So very diverse that way. I think it would be more inclusive than maybe you're seeing in other places. But it's still a struggle, and, just pushing forward and you're right, get to a company that values it, because, our lives are short. I don't know how we can change it so quickly. But you're right, get to a company that you see yourself in. Right. And then that would be a little bit more inclusive. And Maple Leaf is one of those places. Not that I'm plugging it, but it's just, it is. And so,
Josie, anything to add?
I'm going to start by saying I think my answer is wrong, and wrong in this, not incorrect, wrong in that it shouldn't be this way. I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about you needing to be your biggest advocate. And then also finding an ally. So I think a lot of people have probably gotten to the position that they are in, or previous positions, because of somebody that they know, or somebody that helped them get there, or a reference, or a foot in the door that helped you get there. I think being your own biggest ally and finding, your own biggest advocate and finding an ally is going to be probably the best, the most fruitful way of getting in there. So if you are going into an interview and you know nobody at the organization, or nobody that knows anybody at the organization, you're usually at a disadvantage that somebody who's going in with a reference, or I know somebody who worked there, or my friend worked for them, or my cousin worked for them, or some sort of connection. Usually that person would get an interview just as a courtesy. If you're going in there without some sort of introduction to them, you're at that disadvantage already. So I think making connections, these types of events, I think are good for that, because you're going to meet a lot of people in a short period of time in the same room that are probably facing a lot of the same or similar issues that you are. But I think finding allies and networking with people who are willing to help you along the way, because it's not easy, and I don't think any of us do this on our own.
Show your passion when you're there.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing better than bringing energy to it. People will remember you if you do that.
And Kelsey, anything further to add?
I think it's just important to add that everyone else should be looking at themselves and saying, should I be doing more? Can I help out? Is there something that I'm receiving that I don't realize isn't an opportunity to someone else? When I was in my role, I was I checked all the boxes for women in trades advocate. And I went to a lot of speaking events, and they'd always, Kels, can you go do this? And I realized that I was the only one being asked. And I look around and I see my friend Beverly, who's a woman of color, and I say, can we bring Bev? They're like, oh, okay, sure. And then I say, actually, I can't make it. Beverly should do all of it. So she gets the opportunity. And then that actually led to her getting a job opportunity somewhere else. And then same thing, someone's asked me to go to an event tonight. And I said, I've got another woman that I can bring. So it's looking around and saying, when do I get certain opportunities? And maybe I'm not realizing I'm getting it because I fit a certain look that they're going for. Can I open it up to more people? Like, let's, if I've benefited from something, can I help someone else benefit from it? And or not.
I love that. So to answer your question, in summary, it is making more space at the table, finding those allies to make more space at the table. And then for us ourselves to be very aware of it and make that space at the table for others. Thank you so much.
We have just 3 minutes left.
Yes.
And we actually had Mame waiting very patiently with one last question. So we'll let her take that away.
Yeah, thank you. So my question is regards to what advice would you give to female newcomers trying to navigate the Canadian working landscape? Because I come from a culture where there was nothing I come from Ghana, by the way, and there was nothing male-dominated work or female dominated work, women are encouraged to go into business. For instance, I worked at Unilever for almost 7 years, and even most of our top grossing distributors were actually female owned distribution companies who like churned in $1 million revenues for us. However, coming to Canada, I realized that it's a different culture and also a different landscape. For instance, I realized that if you're soft-spoken, it's assumed that you are not confident or you lack some form of skills. And also, if you are direct, I come from a culture where we are direct, and it's perceived as being rude or arrogant. So what advice would you give to female newcomers trying to navigate? Because aside not having like the social connections, there's also like a gap in terms of understanding like the culture, and there might be some form of mismatch.
You've given us the final rapid response question because we have 2 minutes left. I'm gonna start and just conclude and say, be your authentic self. Because when you are your authentic self, you find more confidence and you maintain your integrity in who you are and what you're passionate about and the work that you do. Trust me, I deal with that every single day in the job that I do. So be your authentic self.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to know your audience. You are in a different place. My best production manager is from Ghana, and she's very direct, but she's learned how to take her skills and make it work with other people. So don't lose what you have. You may have to temper it a bit, but we all have to temper our stuff to get along, right? So you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Josie, and then we'll end with Kelsey.
Yeah, and then just for the sake of time, just building on that as well, I think if you are yourself, you'll find a job that you actually want to be at. You wouldn't want to work at a job that you have to show up to every single day and be somebody else and pretend to not be yourself and act while you're there. So if you are your authentic self, then you're going to attract the job opportunities of a place that you're going to want to continue to go to.
And then I would say is just really try and build, find some other women or people that are dealing with the same thing, because a lot of times it feels like this is only happening to me. I'm failing at this. It's because of me. But just talking to someone and they'll say, no, I'm dealing with the exact same thing. And then you can kind of brainstorm like, let's try this. Let's see if this works. Because it's unfortunate and it's not easy. And it can be so hard. So trying to find that community to talk it over with is so beneficial.
And that concludes our awesome panel of women. I want to say very much a big thank you to the incredible women who are breaking down barriers and crashing through glass ceilings in their sectors. Debbie, Kelsey, Josie, thank you very much. And to the Brampton Board of Trade and to all of you for participating and engaging on this important panel. I'm going to hand it back to Sonia.
Amazing. Thank you so much, ladies. That was a wonderful panel. At this time, everyone can take a break. Please visit our information tables out in the foyer. There's some amazing organizations that have a ton of information for you. Visit the washroom and then head back for 2:15 for our next panel. In this room will be panel C, Bridging Generations, Unlocking the Potential of a Diverse Workforce. And then in Garden 2 will be panel D, Harnessing Technology to Enhance the Employee Experience. So we'll see you or some of you back here at 2:15. And if you're heading into the next panel, head into Garden 2 for 2:15. Thank you.